Welcome back. My name is Paulaj বিশ্বাস, Assistant Professor, JS College of Engineering, Department of Mechanical Engineering. And today discuss the shading, and this is under the subject of computer aided designs, and this is my lecture number 20. The shading refers to the depsi- depreciations of depth perceptions in 3D models within the field of 3D computer graphics or stations in visual arts by varying the levels of darkness, and the shading tries to approximate local behaviors of low lights on the objects that like the surface and is not to be confused with the techniques of adding shadows such as shadows mapping or shadow volumes, and which fall under global behavior of lights. Basically, the shading is concerned the according to the 3D models, and that's like your the different type of depends on this the lights of this object during to the shading is creating. The shading is used traditionally in drawing for differentiating a range of darkness by applying media more densely or with a darker shades for darker areas and less densely or with a lighter shades for lighter area. This counts. Basically, the during toward the darkness is considered, then you have to applying some lights during toward the darkness, and that like your the more density, and then you have to consider according to the darker shades for the darker area and less density, then you have to consider according to the shades is come that like the lighter area, and the light patterns such as object having light and shaded areas help when the creating the illusions of depth on paper. Basically, the each and every paper you have to concentrate some creating some illusions, and concentrate according to this that like you have to consider the shaded area. There are various techniques of shading including cross hatching, and basically you have to draw in your the first year engineering graphics, then you have to given the hashing sign that like your the including the hashing cross sets also will be given during to this the separation of this object, that this area will be considered according to your the hashing is given, the including to the cross hashing, the where perpendicular lines of varying closeness are drawn in grid pattern to shade and area. And another things you have to given these shadings that like your the perpendicular lines, and few cases you can see that like your the cross lines that like the only single hashings will be given, not will be the cross hashings will be found here. Okay, this will be considered according to your the shading that like your the closing, and also the different grids will be considered according you to draw this the different shading area. The closer the lines are together, the darker the areas appears is here. The likewise the further apart the lines are, the lighter the area appears. The you see here that like your the darker area appears, and the few cases you can see that like your the lighter area appears, and powder shading is here. The we can see that like the powder shadings, the few mouth face you can see that different powders will be given here the shade, like that your skin will be covered by this the powder, then you have to consider your shading will be considered according to your the mouth or your face. But similarly the powder shading is a sketching shadings method. Now, in this style, the stamping powder and paper stamps are used to draw a picture. That like you have to consider suppose a stamp pad will be considered. That like your the stamp is given is on name, address will be here, and you have to always putting your stamp on this the powders inside of your darkness sets, and also you have to stamping on this the paper, then you have to creating a picture, that like you the draw a picture. This can be in color also. And the stamping powder is smooth and does not have any shiny particles. And the paper to be used should have small grains on it, so that the powder remains on the paper. Powder remains on the paper. This will be considered according to your the stamping powder also. And a few cases, suppose your the different type of printings will be considered according to this, then this will be given to your the powders, and also you have to consider according to this one will be the writings will be there, that is the shadows will be creating. In computer graphics, shading refers to process of altering the color of an object, surface, polygon in the 3D screens also. The based on things like, but not limited to, the surface angle to lights, its distance from lights, its angle to the camera, and materials properties, that is the bidirectional reflectance, the distributions for functions to create a photo photorealistic effects will be comes, that like your the computer graphics. Basically this will be considered according to your the 3D scan based on things like but not limited to. And another is the light its angle to the camera and materials properties, that like the bidirectional reflections, reflectance, distributions functions will be considered to create a photorealistic effects will be comes during toward the computer graphics settings. The shading is performed during the rendering process by a program called a shader. You have to the given, that like the rendering process, this is considered the shader. And during to these shaders you have to draw, and you have to given these shadings on your the computer graphics applications. And during another figures you have to draw. Suppose you can see the different programs by your the computer graphics, you have to consider the your like on the parts you have to given to this the on color, but another parts you have to given to this the another color. These differentiates will be done very easily during toward the program settings, program by a program. This is the or the by using to this the shader. And surface angles to a light source is comes here. The shading alters the color of face in a 3D model based on the angle of the surfaces to a light source, or light sources will be considered, that like your the surface angle to a light source will be comes here. You have to based on this the 3D model base. And another things is here, the first image below has the face of the box rendered, and this will be considered according to your the first image. This will be comes from your the renders, but all in the same color will be considered, and you have to given the all in this the same color. And another thing is that the edge lines have been rendered here as well, which makes the image easier to see. Your the image easier to see. The second image is the same model rendered without edge lines is considered. That like your edge lines have been rendered. That is the as well as makes the image easier to see. You know how easy way you have to see your the image. The second image is to same model will be considered, that like your the rendered without edge lines. And another thing, it is difficult to tell where one face of the box ends and the next begins is considered. The third image has shadings enabled. Third image has shading enabled, which makes the image more realistic is here, and makes it easier to see which face is which here. That like your here is considered the third image has shadings enabled, which makes the image more realistic and make it easier to see which face is here, and which face is where will be goes, and also will be considered according to this. That like your the surface angles to right source is here. You can see this is the three figures will be considered, just like your the first image, second image, and the third image already discussed on this the previous slides. You can see that like your the first image you have to consider below has face of the box center but in the wall in the color of same, that like your the raised renders. And the second image, there is the this is the same image with the lines removed. The only indications of the interior geometry are the points of the object. This is called the silhouette is considered. This is the third image. You can see that like your the same object and the renders with the fault flat shadings will be considered. Just like you have to given that is the flat shading. Flat shadings you have to consider according to this the one parts you have to the one shadings will be here, and which alerted the colors of the 3D visuals, three visible front, the face based on their angles and determined by the normal vector to be to the light sources is considered according to this the third picture. The first one is considered according to this the rendering image of the box. This image has no shadings on its face, but instead use edge lines to the separate the face and border lines to separate the object from the background. You have to consider this is the basically three phase will be concentrated according to it the final shadings is comes, and like your the third object the one sides and shading will be considered. You can see the seal OT, that is the English is considered, that is the this words is comes from this or the French, that like the silhouette is the image of a person, that like your the human beings may be considered, and according to your the any people this will be considered according to your the image, and the animals, and that is the silhouette is considered that like the image of a person, animal, object, or since represented as a solid shape of single color. That likes the you have to consider according to the single colors. Maybe this will be the considered this is the solid shape the any type of object is a single color, usually black with its edge matching the outline of the subject. And like the you have to consider that this is the silhouette is the English consideration, that like your the French will be considered silhouette. This is the comes from a image from the people, persons, the animals, object. This is the considered according to your the single color object, usually the black with its edge the matching the outer outline of this the subject. And another things, the interior of a silhouette is featureless is considered. That like the their interiors you have to consider the featureless, and the silhouette is usually presented on a light background. That like you have to consider the light backgrounds, usually white or none at all is considered. The basically the this is the silhouette is usually presented on a light backgrounds will be considered. You have to note the dark backgrounds will be taken during to your the silhouette, and the usually white or none at all is the here. The silhouette differs from an outlines. Basically this will be differs of an outlines with the depicts the edge of an object, that like your the depicts the edge of an object in a linear form, while a silhouette appears as a solid. That like your the silhouette is appears as a solid shape, and also this will be considered that like you have to come this is a single color, and also this the black shapes will be given during to this the matching outlines will be considered, and this an object in a linear form will the silhouette appears as a solid shape. The silhouette image may be created in any visual artistic media will be comes, and like the this silhouette image is considered the any visual artistic media, but where the first used to describe pieces of card paper, and this will be comes during to your the first pieces that like your the card papers which are then stuck to a backing stuck to a backing in a contrasting color and often framed will be here. Basically, we can see the different type of card paper, and also that this is a different type of image will be considered, and during period the backing and also the contrasting color also will be fine during period the this type of frame is considered. The type of lighting, the what is how many types of lighting is fine during toward the settings. When a shader computer computes the results color, just like your the shader is computes the result colors, it uses a lighting model to determine the amount of light reflected at specific points on the surfaces comes here. That like that this will be considered according to the lighting model to determine the amount of light reflected at the specific point on the surface. And another thing is here, the different lighting model, the different lighting models you have to can be combined with the different shadings techniques. Suppose you have the single lightings models will be considered, that means your the single shadings will be comes the light reflected at the specific point on the surface, and different lightings models can be combined with the different shadings techniques. While the lighting says how much light is reflected, that means your the how much light is deflected. Shading determines how this information is used in order to compute the final results will be comes here. That like the different shadings considerations will be come here. The lighting says the how much light is reflected, that is the where is the light will be reflected will be the and what is the you are observing it here. And another shadings determines how this information is used to in order to compute the final result. That means you have to consider to your the final shadings will be comes during to your the lights will be passing through these systems. It may for example compute lightings only at specific points and use interpolations will be here. That like your the compute lightings, the only at is the specific points is come here and use the interpolations to final fill in the rest. The shader may also decide about how many light source to take into account, etc. Basically your the shaders always decide about how many light source to take into account here. And another thing is the ambient lightings. The basically the ambient lightings, that means you have to consider the light is comes from your the ambience. And the when you have to suppose out this cameraman's take a captions, then this cameraman's always given some lights and different light during toward the focus. But the few cases we can see this lighting is the not the proper picture is come, but your the day in a day when your the sun is given some lights during to this the captions, then this will be considered say according to the ambient lightings consideration will be here. That like the god is give the full lightings will be considered according to this. An ambient light source represent an omnidirectional lights is come, that like the omnidirectional, that is the fixed intensity and fixed color light source that affects all objects in the skin equally is omnipresent will be here. That like your the ambient lights is given, that like this will be the fixed source, that like or the sun is given is considered is the fixed in source, and that like or the sun is given to this the ray, that like your the intensity is the fixed, and fixed color lights will be comes from your the from sun and affects the all object in the sense equally, and skins equally sense equally is here, and this like is called the is omnipresent is here. That during rendering the all object in the skins are brightened with the specific intensity and colors is comes during to your the renderings. And this type of light source is mainly used to provide the skins with the basics view of the different objects in the units. Another thing is comes here, this is the simplest type of lighting to implement and models how light can be scattered will be come, that like your the light is considered according to your the scattered or deflected the many times. The basically the light is comes from your the any type of models, and how this light can be scattered on this surface of this, or few cases we can see your the reflected on your light, just like your the many times is the reflections comes and also given to your the shadow is creating that like that, and or this the reflected many times, thereby producing a uniform effect is come, that like your the ambient light is considered during to this, and ambient lighting can be combined with the ambient the conclusions to represent how exposed this point of this skin is the affecting the amount of ambient light it can be can reflect this produce the diffuse non-directional lighting throughout the skin, casting no clear shadows is comes, but with the enclosed and the sheltered areas darkness is darkened will be here. The result is usually visually similar to an overcast day is considered. The point lightings, the light the originates from a single point and the spread outwards in all directions. The spot lightings is here. Models is spotlights light originates from a single point and the spread outwards in a cone. The area lightings is here. The light originates from a small area on a single plane is considered. A more realistic model than a point light source will be here. The directional lightings is here. A directional light source illuminates all objects equally from a given directions, like an area light of infinite size and infinite distance from the screens is here. There is a shadings that like the but cannot be any distance fall out is come. This is like the sum of the sun is here. The distance fall out will be considered that theoretically two surfaces which are parallel are illuminated virtually the same amount from the distance and blocks light sources such as the sun. The distance fall off effect produce the image which have more shadings and also would be realistic for the proximal light sources comes here. The light image does not use distance fall off. The notice that the color on the front face of the two boxes are exactly the same. In many appears may appear that there is a slight difference where the two face directly overlap, but this is an optical illusion causes by the vertical edge below where the two face meets is here. The right image does uses distance fall off. Notice that the front face of the color box is brighter than the front face of this box. Back box is here. Also the floor goes from the light to the dark. It's get further away is considered. That like this figures is here. The two boxes render with the open gel. Note that the color of this the two front faces the same, even through one is further away. The same model rendered using the analysis card CAD which implemented distance fall off to make surface that are closer to the eye batteries here. The calculation is comes during toward the distance fall off can be calculated in the number of ways. That is the power of the distance for a given point at a distance x from the light source. So the light intensity receives in is proportional to 1 by x to the power n. None n equals to 0. That like the light intensity minus the light intensity received in the is the same regardless of the distance between the points and the light sources here. The linear that like your the n equals to 1 for a given point at a distance x from the light source. The light intensity receives in proportional to 1 by x. The quadratics is here n equals to 2. This is the how light intensity decrease in reality if the light has a free path is considered. That is the no fog or any other things in the air that can be absorbed or scatters the lights. For a given points at distance x from the light sources, the light intensity received is proportional to 1 by x square. Any number of other mathematical functions may also be used is here. That like your the shading the techniques is given during this the shading. A surface normal is often needed for lighting computations, that like your the normal can be pre-computed and stored for each vertex of this the module is considered is here. And you have to consider like your the flat shading. It is a flat shading since the lighting is evaluates only once for these polygons, usually for the first vertex in the polygons, but sometimes for for the centroids of triangle meshes based on the polygon surface normal and on the assumption that all polygons are flatted. The computed color is used for the whole polygons, making the corner look sharp. This is usually used when more advanced shading techniques are too computationally expensive. The specular highlights are rendered properly with the flat shadings is here. If there happens to be a large specular components at the respectiveness vertex, that brightness is drawn uniformly over the interface is considered. If a specular highlights does not fall on the representatives points, it is missed entirely. Consequently, the specular reflections components is usually not included in flat shadings computational is here. That like the smooth shadings. In contrast to flat shadings where the color change discontinuously at polygons border is here. The with smooth shadings, the color change from the pixel to pixel. That like this will be depends on your the different type of pixel, resulting in a small smooth color. The transitions between the two adjacent polygons is here. The is considered that like you have to getting tuned toward the smoothing shadings, and usually values are fast calculated in the vertex, and bilinear interpolations is used to calculate the values of pixels between the vertex is here. And another things of the polygons, these the types of smooth shadings include the guard shadings, and also the guard shadings and the fog shadings will be here. Fog shadings is considered is here. That like the guard shadings is here. Determine the normal or is polygon vertex. Apply an illuminations model to each vertex to calculate the light intensity from the vertex normal, and interpolates the vertex intensities using bilinear interpolations over the surface polygon is considered. That like the problems is here due to lightings of being computed only at vertex. The inaccuracies, especially of specular highlights of large triangles, can become too apparent. The T junctions with the adjoining polygons can sometimes result in visual anomalies is here. In general, the T junctions should be avoided is here. That like your the fog shadings is here. That like the fog shadings is similar to ground shadings, except that the instead of interpolating these lights intensities of the normal are interpolated between the vertex, and the light is evaluated per pixel is here. Thus the specular highlights are computed much more thus precisely than the grounded shadings models is here. The computer normal n for each vertex of the polygon is considered. The using the bilinear interpolations computed normal, that is the ni for each pixels normal has to be renormalized each times is here. The apply an illuminations model to each pixels to calculate the light intensity from the ni. The other approaches is considered according to this, that like your the both guard shadings and the fog shadings can be implemented using the bilinear interpolations is considered. That like your the Bishop and Weimar proposed to use a Taylor series expansions of the resulting expressions from applying an illuminations model, and bilinear interpolations is comes here of the normals is considered. Hence the second degree polynomial interpolations was used during to these the systems. And the next class we can discuss the depth perceptions. Okay, thank you students.